Welcome to our tutorial about the viewport. In my model space, I've got a finished model. I've applied dimensions to it. This model was created using the AutoCAD Imperial template. Here's the template. Let's cancel out of this window, and let's open the Units dialog window. Application button, Drawing Utilities, scroll up to Units. As you see here, I am using decimal and inches for this document. Cancel out. After we finish, more times than not, we need to put our work on paper. To do so, we plot it. Here's the Plot tool. The Plot dialog window opens. Plot basically means print or prepare for printing. We're going to look at this dialog window in more detail in a subsequent lesson. For now, I'm just going to select my printer, Adobe PDF. Paper size will be letter. As you see, the preview is 8.5 by 11 inches. Now we specify the plot area. I'll use window. And I'll make my window selection. And I'm taken right back to the dialog window. The scale will specify it 1:1. Let's click Preview to check our work. Okay, it didn't work very well. We right-click and exit. This takes us back to the dialog window. Let's try the Fit to Paper option. And preview again. Now the model fits on the paper, but the scale's a bit random, so we're going to need to fix that. The point is this: printing a model from model space is possible, but it's not the easiest or most convenient way to do your printing. Let's return to the Plot dialog window. We'll right-click and select Exit. Cancel out of this window now. At the bottom of the drawing area, we've got a few tabs here. Model, and then Layouts 1 and 2 are paper tabs. We just switch between them with a left click. If you don't see these tabs, go to Options, Display, and turn them on by checking these boxes here. Now I don't have them. Let's go back to Options and restore them. Okay. Let's click on Layout 1. If you want, you can simply double-click to rename Layout 1. Here we have a representation of our paper. The dashed line border around here is the printable area. There's a blue rectangle in the middle, and this is the viewport. In a previous lesson, we learned about switching between paper and model space simply by double-clicking. We're currently in paper space. Let's double-click. And now we're in model space. Let's restore paper space. Double-click. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to understand how our work is organized via the layers. Here we've got a part layer. There's a center line layer, a dimension layer. There's also a viewport layer. It's a good idea to create a viewport on a separate layer, and in a second, it'll be understandable why that is a good idea. Okay, the toggle below tells us that I'm in paper space. Let's click on this layer and press Delete. It does seem like I've deleted my model, but that's not the case. Let's go back to model space. We see that my model is still here. Basically, what the viewport is this. It's a window through which you can see your model. You can have more than one viewport, of course. Currently, we're on the Home tab. Let's go to the View tab. That's where the Viewports panel is, right here. We're going to create a new viewport now, but before we do so, let's be sure we're on the correct layer. Let's go back to the Home tab, Layers panel, and let's select Viewport from the drop-down menu. Back to the View tab, Viewports. Let's go to the new Viewports tab, select Single, and let's click OK. Here is the viewport. Let's undo. Another way, we can also create a viewport from these three options. Let's select Rectangular, draw a rectangle, and here is our viewport. Now let's set the scale of our drawing. To do so, double-click inside the viewport. As you see, we're now in model space, and we can set the scale right here. Right now it says about 0.5, 0.496, etc. This means our scale is about 1 to 2. So let's select 1 to 2. And as you see, we were close enough, not much changed. Let's try a 1-to-1 scale to see what that looks like. And let's restore 1 to 2. So this looks pretty good. We're ready to print. Go to the Quick Access toolbar and click Plot. Choose our printer, Adobe PDF. Now what to plot, the layout. Scale 1-to-1 is good. And let's click Preview. As you see, in this way, we've got much more control than printing from model space. Let's right-click and exit. Now the viewport, as you probably guessed, behaves like any other object in AutoCAD. In order to access the Viewport Properties, just click outside the viewport. Okay, and now we're in paper mode. Select the viewport, open up the Properties palette, and here are the Viewport Properties. The scale we can change right here. It's 1 to 2. Right below it is the Custom Scale property, shown at 0.5. That's what we see in the status bar at the bottom of the screen. What I'm going to do here is switch the Display Locked property to Yes. As you hear, the locked symbol is now switched on. What this does is prevent us from accidentally making any changes to our viewport. Now when I double-click on the viewport, we're in model space. If I try to move anything, I can't. If I want to create geometry from here, though, I'm able to. And by the way, this geometry will indeed appear in model space as well. Let's select and delete it. Right-clicking on the Layout tab gives us a contextual menu from which we can delete, rename, move or copy paper space, and so on. If I right-click on the Model Space tab, you'll see some similar options: delete, rename, move, and copy. But they're grayed out here, and that's because we can't delete or copy model space. Let's go to Layout 1, right-click, Move and Copy. Check Create a Copy. Now choose Where before Layout 1, and click OK. And here's a copy of Layout 1. I can grab and move the tab to reposition it. I can also hold down the Control tab and create another copy. Let's right-click and select Delete to remove it. OK, and let's delete this copy as well. To confirm, OK. Of course, we can create more than one paper port. Right now, I'm on Layout 2. I'm going to select my viewport, and I'll resize it. Double-click, middle button, and let's double-click the left button, and double-click the middle button again. I'm going to move my view a little bit up, and resize the viewport just a little more. Let's create another viewport now. Be sure we're on the right layer first, the viewport layer. Let's go to the View tab, Viewports panel, Rectangular, and let's draw a rectangle. And here's our second viewport. Now let's say I want a more detailed view of this circle. Let's double-click inside the viewport with your left mouse, of course. Zoom in. And as you see, our scale is about 1 to 1. It's 0.956, etc. I'm going to select 1 to 1. Reposition my model just a bit. You may see that I actually do have some problems. There's some dimensions that look different. Right here and right up here. Let's learn how we can solve this problem. I'm going to create one more layer. Go to the Home tab, open the Layers palette, New Layer. Let's call it Dimension Print. And let's change the color to magenta. OK. Let's make this the current layer. And let's close the palette. Now let's go to the Annotate tab. We'll create a new dimension style. Standard is pre-selected. Let's click New. We'll call this style Print. Click Continue. The text height let's change to 0.15. The arrow size 0.15 as well. Let's click OK. Let's select our new style, click Set Current, and we're ready to close. Currently, I'm in Model Space. Let me double-click outside the viewport, and this takes me to Paper Space. Let's apply some dimensions now. Let's use a linear dimension. Snap to Endpoint, select here. Snap to Endpoint again, select here, and drop it here. Now let's work with a radius dimension. And we'll drop it about here so we can better compare the dimensions. These dimensions belong to the current paper space. We're not going to see those in model space. As you see, even though we've got different scales in our viewport, the dimension size is the same. Now, if your work looks different, let's talk about what has likely happened. Let's double-click inside the viewport and go to Model Space. Let's apply dimensions. First of all, I can't place the dimension outside the viewport. Let's double-click on the viewport. And as you see here, I've got some dimensions which aren't visible. Of course, both of these dimensions appear in model space. You can see this dimension right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our preview. Plot. Select my printer, Adobe PDF. And by the way, if your preview button is grayed out, it's because you haven't selected a printer. Let's go ahead and click Preview. As you see, our dimensions look a lot more uniform now. Next, let's talk about the border of the viewport, these blue boxes. If you do want these boxes, that's perfectly fine, but in case you don't, we do have a solution for this. Let's go to the Home tab, and that's why I created them on separate layers. I can simply turn the layer off, and now the boxes aren't visible. By the way, the black box we see here around the first viewport is because we're in model view through this viewport. We can also freeze the viewport layer, which has the same effect. But in case you want the viewport border visible, we can make the viewport layer non-plottable. In other words, not printed. We switch the plottability on and off via this toggle here. Let's check out our work. Click on Plot, select my printer, and now click Preview. And as you see, we don't have the blue boxes now around the viewport. Let's right-click and exit. Notice that every time I open the Plot dialog window, I've got to select a printer. You may be wondering if there's a way around that. There is. Let's cancel out of the Plot dialog window. Now let's right-click on the Layout 2 and go to Page Setup Manager. Select Layout 2, and let's click Modify. Now we choose a printer, and click OK, and close. Now when I click the plot button, my printer is pre-selected. Let's cancel out of this dialog window. Another thing here, our drawing has got different colors, which is fine for now, but most of the time you'll be printing in black and white or in grayscale. Let's learn how to preview our drawing this way, either in black and white or grayscale. It's called monochrome. Click on the plot button. The printer is pre-selected. Go to the plot style drop-down menu. Let's choose monochrome. Now we click preview, and here is a black and white preview of our work. Let's right-click and exit. Let's right-click on the tab for Layout 2 and scroll up to Page Setup Manager. Layout 2 is selected. Let's click Modify. And let's select Monochrome. We're going to learn more about pen assignments shortly. For now, let's just check Display Plot Styles. With this option checked, we can preview our drawing in Paperspace in black and white mode. By the way, as you see, we've got a grid here. To turn it off, double-click inside the viewport. Now we're in model space. Turn the grid off. AutoCAD turns the grid off only for this viewport. One last thing. Let's go to the View tab. Back to the Viewports panel. So far, we've dealt with rectangular viewports, but we can also set up other shapes, basically any shape of viewport. A viewport can overlap another viewport. Let's right-click, scroll up to Close. After we've created a viewport, we can adjust it. Just drag the handles. We've also got the option to cut the viewport or clip it. The viewport is already pre-selected. Right-click, scroll to Polygonal. Right-click and close. And this concludes our tutorial about using viewports.